On this episode of Wilco's Tiny Adventure, we stare at the sun. I admire my stickers. We look for buried treasure. Josh falls down. And this is what we call a cinematic filler, trying to hook you to watch the rest of this 25-minute YouTube video.
Good morning. Sunday morning, going 109 kilometers an hour, 68 miles an hour for those of you watching the stateside. Cruising down the 126 freeway. We are heading east to meet up with my buddy Josh here shortly. Gonna fuel up and then hit the road. We're gonna go hit the Miller Jeep Trail, just do a quick overnight run. Just get out and stretch the legs of the vehicles and our own, I suppose, since it's been a few months since we've been out in the Jeeps and they've just been sitting here collecting dust. It looks like some of the Lockwood Trail is closed. That's the road that leads into the Miller Jeep Trail. So we're going to end up having to go all the way around. So we're going to cut all the way up to the 5 freeway and kind of jog back in the mountain from the north side, which a little bit untraditional for us, especially just going out to the Miller Jeep Trail. But anyways, you do what you got to do. It's still going to be a nice day. Clear skies, good visibility. A balmy 43 degrees currently. Should be nice this evening for camping. I imagine high 30s, low 40s, somewhere in that neighborhood.
And here we are at the start of the trail. This is where Lockwood Valley Road begins, right off of the highway here in Fraser Park. We decided to air down here, but before we hit the trail, Josh noticed that his front differential was a little bit wet near the bottom, so he decided before we hit the trail, he was going to pull the fill plug, just check the fluid level before we traversed any further. Thankfully, after he pulled the plug and checked the fluid, everything was okay, and we proceeded on. And just like that, we were finally hitting the dirt. As you can see, the start of this trail is pretty mild-mannered. It's really just a gravel road. You definitely don't need four-wheel drive for this portion of Lockwood Valley, but it's a really nice drive, very scenic. We actually saw some hunters out here this weekend as well. This is all public land, so there were some guys out here doing quail hunting. We saw a few different groups out here. I spoke with a couple of them. They were very friendly. We were the only 4x4s that we saw other than those two kids on some dirt bikes. Otherwise, we had the trail to ourselves almost the entire time we were out here. And here we are at the end of Lockwood Valley Trail. We're making our way through the gate, heading to the start of the actual Miller Jeep Trail. You can tell the elevation drops a little bit here as you come down to a little bit of a river crossing. Due to the time of year and the little bit of rain we've had, there is actually a little bit of standing water here on the trail. And the creek was flowing. That's the first time I've ever seen it that way. It was a little bit of a surprise as we came to cross the creek and head up the hill to start the trail. There were some people that decided it was a good idea to camp right at the start of the trail. This is not a permitted camping spot by any means. I'm not sure what these people thought they were doing here, but it was clear that this was not their first night there. They had all their gear set up and were here. I had to get out and ask them to move so we could actually get through and start the trail.
Hey guys, howdy. Can I get you to move one of your vehicles so we can get through?
Though these folks did finally move their rig, I really had to bite my tongue and not say something. You know, it's so important to camp in designated areas, though my guess is that these campers didn't know they were doing anything wrong. We see this a lot since the pandemic. There's just so many new people in the hobby and they don't fully understand where it is they should be camping. Unfortunately, because people camp where they shouldn't and they have fires where they shouldn't be, a lot of these areas are getting shut down or closed for parts of the season so that they can be closely monitored. So a little research before you head out can usually prevent this and typically ensures you have a better and a safer time. And you can see the trail starts with a nice little uphill climb. It's nothing too technical, but it does act as a gatekeeper. This trail isn't very difficult, but this is a good indicator of what's to come. Really, any capable four-wheel drive vehicle with some ground clearance can tackle this trail. I would just leave the Subaru at home for this one. were really fortunate during our trip. We didn't see another vehicle on the trail. It was really surprising considering we were out here on a holiday weekend. We were here on New Year's of 2025. Typically places like this get overrun on holiday weekends. This trail is located just north of Santa Clarita, so pretty short drive for most people in Los Angeles. That's why it was so surprising we didn't see anyone. It's never been like this the other times we've been out here. It was really nice having the trail to ourselves though. This allowed us the freedom to slow down, sightsee a little bit, and just take our time. Sometimes on a single lane trail like this, it can be a pain since it's not designated as a one-way trail. This usually leaves you having to find a spot to pull off the trail and let another group pass if they're coming at you. Or if they're stuck on an obstacle, you may be just sitting there and waiting. Hopefully you brought some beverages and you can enjoy something on the side of the trail as you wait. I would imagine most people run the trail opposite of the way we did. The trail either starts or ends in the Gorman OHV Park area. We typically choose to run it the way we did this time so we don't have to pay to enter the OHV area. If you finish the trail in the park, you can just leave, so there is no payment. It's also more convenient for us typically to start on this side of the trail as it's just closer to home, and then we finish near the highway and we end up taking the highway back, though that wasn't the way that it happened this time. Jeep Trail is a mountain pass, so you can see most of this is an uphill climb. For us, it's about 13 miles from where we started to where we ended up camping for the evening. We camped at the mountain peak, which is at about 4,200 feet in elevation. And over 13 miles, you actually ascend rather quickly. There's a lot of slow uphill like this, but then you get to the top of some of these peaks and you can actually pick up a little speed and make up some ground. Though the speed ends rather quickly as you start hitting some of the technical rocks. What the camera is not picking up on very much is how windy it was that day. We tried really hard to get the drone up in the air multiple times and it just was fighting the wind so much up here that we didn't get to use it nearly as much as we would have liked. Josh and I typically swap off who's leading, and I was able to get some good footage of Josh here. This is really the first rock crawling that you get to do on the Miller Jeep Trail. And as he started here, it was great. He was still in two-wheel drive, and you can see he's struggling just a little bit. I think he had to stop here and finally throw it into four-wheel drive. But this is a pretty nice little climb, and Josh decided to take the hard line. Sometimes when the camera's rolling, it's the confidence and the inspiration that you need to take that hard line. And for most of these obstacles, there's small bypasses and ways to get around them, but in our Jeeps, they're plenty capable of handling anything that this trail has to throw at us. And in an effort to get off of some of the gravel road driving, we want to hit those obstacles like that. We had been on the trail a couple hours and Josh and I were both getting hungry. We were coming up to a designated picnic and camp area that a lot of people like to stop at. It's almost the halfway mark through the trail, and it's a great spot to stop and have lunch. There's a nice river crossing here, and it's a maintained area by the Bakersfield Trailblazers, which is a local off-road club that takes care of it. You see here I parked out of the way a little bit. I was trying to keep the Jeep with visibility to the sky so I could keep my Sirius connection going. The Vikings were playing and I was trying to continue listening to the game on the radio. After a short lunch break, we decided to hit the trail again. Leaving where we ate, you have to cross this little creek. Because there's been so much water, one of these big rocks ended up flowing right in our way. I think when I drove over at first, I ended up changing its position, which made it a little bit harder for Josh to get over here. Usually this is a really shallow crossing. Sometimes there's not even water in it. After a couple of attempts though, he was able to get over it. The problem with stuff like this is it's unsettled. So as soon as you start driving over it with a heavy Jeep, the rock just wants to move and twist on you.
Yep. And you're gonna climb it the same way I did. There you go.
After our lunch stop, the trail started to get more rugged. The rocks start getting bigger the higher you get in elevation and the more technical the trail gets. Technical or not though, we were just glad to be out here and actually spending time in nature and out in the Jeeps. You can't beat it. We both have the same engine in our minivans. It's the little 2-liter twin turbo, and you can really tell as you start getting higher and a little bit more aggressive climbing that the fan really revs loud. It's like it tries really hard to stay cool. And watching the gauges, it does a good job at it, but when you're standing outside and you listen to some of this video, you'd think the thing is ready to take flight.
Yeah, I just had to bump it a little. I'm wondering if I should try and hug more that way. I mean, you did too. You can see your tires. Or if I should try and put my tire here and climb it. Yeah.
After I spun my wheels a little bit there, we decided to get out and look at it and converse. This happens a lot of times for the person who's in the lead. You typically choose the line on your own, see how it goes, and then the rest of the group will get out and determine if they're going to take a different line based on your experience. And you can see when Josh and I got out, put our heads together, he chose a little bit different line and was able to just walk up over this obstacle. Sometimes it's a little bit easier if you get out and look at it. I decided not to. I just went for it. Either way, we both got through it.
right here. Hit my head on that rock.
Just a little. Driver, driver. After that last obstacle, the trail gets pretty easy again. It becomes almost maintained as you head up to the camp that we're staying at. The camp is part of the Los Padres National Forest. It's called the Dutchman Campground. And usually it's pretty busy with other Jeepers, but we had it almost to ourselves, just like the trail. There was only one other group camping up here. The sites are usually well maintained. It's nice because there is a latrine there as we just rolled by, and it was a nice afternoon. We got up here with plenty of daylight left to set up camp and kind of explore, walk around a little bit. We both brought our rooftop tents since the trail isn't that challenging. Because we figured it was going to be cold, we both brought our diesel heaters as well, so we were able to set those up and pump heat into our tent at night. And I'm sure glad we did. I initially thought it was going to be high 30s, and it ended up getting down into the low 30s. The water that I left out was frozen in the morning, so it got pretty cold. I was very glad to have that diesel heater set up.
Oh, you should watch the video of me falling.
Yeah.
Dinner of Champions.
Yeah, we went easy.
And by the magic of TV, it is morning again already. You can see that we had our diesel heater set up there and the pipe running up into the tent. Josh has one on the other side as well. It was a beautiful morning. It started getting warm again really fast. And because we were the only ones up here, we were able to sleep in. There was no interruptions, no one making noise out and about, which was great. Which is one of the things I look forward to most about camping typically, is how well I sleep. I think a combination of the fresh air and just being worn out from the day usually does that. As I was standing there cooking my breakfast, I looked over at the other campsite where these campers were the night before and noticed there was still a fire going over there.
Look, you can smell it.
Yeah.
Dude, I mean, that thing is smoldering so good. It's unbelievable. And this is why we can't have fires. So thank God we're here and we can extinguish this properly, but this is unbelievable. And you know, the guy's out here with this kid trying to show him a good time, but they didn't even attempt to cover this. There's literally, that's still a smoldering log. This is still an active fire. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. To my 13 followers on YouTube, if you're going to have an illegal fire in a California or in any national park, extinguish the fire, please. And this is the problem this time of year when park rangers and Forest Service agents, they're not patrolling areas like this. This is such a remote campsite, though it is a designated campsite with fire rings. It's posted very clearly that you're not to have a fire. The little fire Josh and I had last night was a propane fire pit, which is permitted. And I get it. It's a pain to bring a propane fire pit, and it's not the real deal. But we do it because that's what's right, and you don't want to start a national, a fire in the national forest. So, anyways, practice proper fire safety if you're coming out here.
That is still so fucking hot.
Yeah, I mean, look at how smoky it still is. Yeah, that was a big fire they had. Well, and it's a good thing, there's not any pine trees or anything around that are extremely flammable, almost directly above the fire pit. So at least they had that going for them.
We finished putting out the rest of that fire and then broke down camp. It was time for us to hit the trail out of there. The descent down the mountain is pretty easy, and it was much less windy today, which gave us an opportunity to get the drone up in the air and get some other camera shots, which was nice. Because this trail isn't designated as a one-way, this is the way that most people take up the mountain to camp at that Dutchman campground. This road going in is rough and rocky, but it's still pretty easy. Really, any four-wheel drive vehicle or any vehicle with a little ground clearance can get up here, especially if it hasn't rained recently. I don't know if this road is maintained per se, but it always stays in fairly good shape without too many big deep ruts. After a few miles of gravel, the trail gets paved again as you start heading back down towards the Gorman Off-Road Park. This is usually where we stop and put air back in our tires just so we're not running so low on the pavement. After airing back up and hitting the trail again, it's really just pavement from here on out. There's only one really short stretch of gravel, but it's a maintained gravel road, so having air in your tires isn't too bad at all. And that is the entire Miller Jeep Trail. It is pretty straightforward, not too technical, can definitely be done in one day if it's something that you want to do for a day run. We like to cut it in half and camp, but definitely not necessary, and it's a nice escape pretty close to LA. Thanks for watching.